Hi, my name is Krista. Welcome to session 2, everybody. We are ready today to fire up a bunch of the online tools in today's session following last week's introductory workshop. Hopefully, if you were able to join us last week, welcome back. It's great to see you again. If you are looking specifically to learn something about one of the tools we're going to cover today, welcome, and we'll update everybody on how to catch up with anything you might have missed. So what we're going to do today is dive right into some of our easiest to access online tools with some quick tutorials for MyTree, iTree planting, iTree design. We're going to see how they can provide estimates of benefits from individual trees with the help of your data input. And before I hand everything off to Jason to get us started today, some quick reminders about logistics for today's session. Again, itreetools.org is where you're going to find a lot of useful stuff, including the information that we presented in session 1, which is now available online at the dedicated page that we have for the 2025 Academy. That includes the recording, which has been posted under the information that's available for last week, May 7th. It also includes some what we're calling self-directed homework, but when we talk about these available exercises, each week we'll put something in there that will help you do a little bit of a review of everything that we've learned that day, which might be particularly helpful as we start to actually look at the tools for the sessions ahead. Again, we're asking everybody to use the chat window in this Teams meeting for questions today. And as we did last week, we'll hang out, the iTree immediate support team will hang out for an additional 10-15 minutes to see if we can't catch up with any questions we might have missed. But with respect to everybody's time, we understand that if you can't hang out, you're always welcome to email us with any questions that you have following the session. And as a reminder, the CEUs, CFEs that we will have available for the live sessions, we're going to be making those available and processing those after the Academy in its entirety ends. So that'll be in the middle of June, and we'll keep everybody posted. A couple of specific reminders for today. We want to remind everybody that, the iTree tools, as a whole, and the data sets that they include, they help inform hundreds of users every day. But the truth is, it wasn't really a system that was built to accommodate all of those users at the same time. So when a group like the one that we have here today is testing everything out at the same time, we love testing out. We love that, we're trying to get these tools in your hands, right? But everybody doing it at the same time can certainly overwhelm the system. As a result, that can end up in some slower processing times or hiccups with the data as we're trying to process results. So we're respectfully asking folks to keep this in mind as we work through the live presentations today. Pack a bit of patience. These are, if you can't open them up while we're here during this hour, you're always going to be able to return to the how-to steps in the video as you look for something specific or go and more leisurely explore any of the tools that we look at and overall, but once our hour is completed today. We also want to let people know that we're really interested in hearing from you, not just today, but as you work through the tools, and especially if you've been here before, if you've participated in an academy and executed a particular project, whether we're exploring them today or if you've actually used any of the others, use our support email to let us know. We're always trying to keep up with the ways that we can share how iTree is a valued resource and a data tool across the many locations and uses that you guys represent. So spread the word, definitely tell us about it. As if it doesn't occur to you today, if it occurs to you next week, always reach out on that email to let us know. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand this off to Jason to get us started, and we're going to take a look at we're going to open some tools live and in person, but thanks for being here.
Thank you, Krista. Yeah, it's great to see so many folks here. We're up over 250, which is pretty impressive for our second go round here. And we appreciate those folks who are new and those folks who are coming back. So my job here right at the start is just try to connect where we were last week with where we're going to go today. So um, last week, we talked about how the tools relate to each other, talked some about the science. This week, we're going to start with our easiest to use individual tree tools. So we're going to jump into those tools. That's going to be MyTree, iTree Design, and iTree Planting. So we'll do about a 10 or 12-minute demo on each one of those. And then we'll talk about how those tools compare and try to get you to a point where you can make a decision about which one of those tools is right for your project. And we are going to introduce other tools in the coming weeks. So it may be that none of these are exactly right for what you need, but hopefully throughout the course of our 6-week academy here, we can get you to the right tool. We can help you decide which tool is best going to fit your project or your needs. And really, that's one of our big goals, is to get you to the right tool and understand what you're seeing when you use that tool. So just to kind of, again, reorient us, you may remember from last time we put up a slide very similar to this. iTree Eco, that's our flagship tool. That's where all the science goes first. We're going to talk about that tool actually in week 5. But then we've got these core individual tree tools, what we sometimes refer to as our bottom-up tools. So these are the tools where you go out and you're actually standing under a tree, you're on the ground, you're going to measure that tree, and you're going to put it into one of the iTree tools. Then we have what we call our top-down tools. That's our canopy-based tools. So those, we're going to give you an image, an aerial image, and you're going to assess how much tree canopy and the benefits from there. And we have a few utilities. We didn't really talk about these a lot, but these are really useful. We know, especially for folks like grad students or companies that want to incorporate iTree benefits into their own tools. So we have an API that allows folks to do that. We have our research suite, which is really where a lot of grad students are doing research that may eventually make it into the iTree tools. One of our teammates here, Jay Hepler, works a lot on the research suite, and that has tools that we're working on developing. We have a tool called Cool Air to help estimate tree benefits related to heat and temperature. We have a tool called iTree Hydro that gets more into the hydrology. So we're not going to talk a lot about those utilities because they get pretty specialized and they start to appeal to a pretty small audience. So we're going to stick with most of the 7 tools on the left side here. And today we'll go with those top 3 core individual tree tools. That's MyTree Planting and Design. And one thing to point out here before I jump off the slide is that of those tools, the only one that works outside the US is MyTree. So if you're working outside the US, probably put your focus on that tool and see if it's right for your application. So again, how these tools relate, all the science goes into iTree Eco first, and then we have what we call this iTree engine. So where Krista mentioned that when we have everybody using the tools at once, all these tools that we're going to talk about today, that MyTree, iTree Planting, they're all pulling their results from this iTree engine. So whichever one of those you're using, it's going to have consistent results from that iTree engine, and they're all pulling from it at the same time. So, if we had 100 people using each one of those tools, that would be 300 people hitting the engine, and that sometimes can bog down the service. But under normal circumstances, if you're using this in a classroom or something like that, all the tools should work okay. So again, this is the relationship between that flagship iTree Eco tool and getting down to our online individual tree tools that are a little simpler to use. And when we make these tools that are simpler to use, it's important to note that you're going to have a little bit less flexibility. You're going to have a little less flexibility in the results. We're also going to have to make some simplifying assumptions about what goes into those tools. So again, we're starting down here on the easier end. We're going to start with our easier to use individual tree tools, and we're kind of work up to some of those harder tools, and we'll mix in our trees when we're talking about iTree landscape to kind of balance out some of the more challenging aspects there. So again, if this helps you orient to how the tools relate to each other and where you may want to start with the iTree tools, hopefully that's why we put together a visual like this. And lastly, just to kind of talk about how this data from that complex iTree Eco model gets into some of these more simplified tools. We talked a little bit about the data that goes into iTree Eco last time, and you have to measure a whole bunch of these field variables. You have to measure things like crown width and tree height and the base of the tree crown. These get really hard to measure if we're talking about entry-level tools or tools you're going to want to use in a classroom with students maybe in middle school or elementary school even. it can be a lot to ask, or even the general public, they may not know what DBH is. So how do we kind of simplify these things down so you don't have to have a whole bunch of specialized skills? And that's what we're trying to work with these simpler online tools. So if you have a tree that looks something like this tree on the left here, where you've got a bunch of wires going through the middle, in our online tools, we actually don't require those crown measurements because we're trying to simplify that down and make it easier to use. So we're not going to know anything about that big missing void in the middle of this tree. If you really want to capture things like that, you're going to have to stick with something like iTree Eco. So when we start to talk about these online tools, we're going to simplify some of these crown measurements, and we're going to make some assumptions about what that crown looks like. In some cases, we're going to have less specific inputs, like in the case of our energy effects in iTree Eco, you're going to measure the actual distance and the compass direction to those. When we talk about the iTree tools, we sort of slim those down into categories that are easier for people to get without having a specialized compass or measuring tape in their hand. Along with that, we're going to have fewer outputs, so the tools are a little more simplified. You're not going to have quite as much to look at. And we're going to make some assumptions about whether those trees live or die. In a tool like iTree Eco, you can do some more complex things. In our online tools, most of the time, we're just going to assume that those trees stay alive for the whole time, with the exception of iTree planting. I'll show how that works in a little bit. So just to kind of keep this in mind, in our online tools, they're all based on that iTree engine. So you'll see a lot of the same inputs throughout. But those are always going to be DBH and species. For our crown measurements, you'll see those are not in the online tools. We're going to model those to keep it all a little bit simpler. And we're going to simplify down some of those other detailed measurements like tree health and building interactions and light availability. So you'll see those kind of same inputs throughout as we go through these tools. So I don't want to belabor that a whole lot more. Just know that we simplify these things down so they work really well for a typical tree or an average tree. But if you've got a tree with a really specialized circumstance that you really want to capture, like this one here with wires going through it, if this was really important to you to capture exactly what's going on with this tree as far as benefits, you might want to use a tool like iTree Eco. If you're fine with those kind of average benefits that are going to be accurate for a typical tree in your city, then you can stick with these online tools. So with that, let's go ahead and I'm going to hand this over to Anna, and she'll jump right into showing us how this all looks in MyTree.
Thanks, Jason. I will. Okay. All right.
Yep.
So MyTree, as Jason said, this is our easiest, most accessible to use tool. Sometimes we kind of call it our gateway tool to the rest of the iTree suite, because again, you can get at those numbers, those values, and of the ecosystem services in a very simple and easy to digest output. So this is what the output of MyTree will look like. So this is again for an individual tree, but it will also break it down by those core ecosystem services that we've mentioned for that are available throughout the tools. And as Jason said, it is simplifying down some of these measurements, both in what it's asking from the user for the input, but you can still make some really interesting analysis using MyTree, maybe comparing trees of different species or conditions to try to understand how those tree characteristics affect the model. And again, yeah, to help as a gateway to help understand how the iTree model works and what these benefits are. So MyTree, again, individual tree tool. So at minimum, you need to have information about the tree that you're interested in terms of identifying what the species is, and that can be down to the genus. That's okay. And inputting some DBH measurement, either the diameter or the circumference, as you'll see. So if you don't have a lot of tools, a bunch of diameter tapes, it's okay. You can still use MyTree. And MyTree is, again, one of the tools that is available anywhere in the world. And MyTree is one of our tools that we've been seeing a lot of growth in usage around the iTree tools, particularly from other countries. And obviously, because this tool is one of the one that's available and it's so accessible and easy to use, it has been used, around the world to introduce people to why trees are good, which is why we're here. So I'm going to try to play this video that these students that we worked with from SUNY ESF, one of the members of the iTree Cooperative, to get you introduced to MyTree and how you can use it.
And I think we're not getting the audio.
Oh, really? Oh, bummer. Okay. All right. I'm just going to skip it, but I will share the link in the YouTube for the YouTube channel on the chat after we're done here. Okay. All right. Well, I will walk you through then a little bit of how the interface of MyTree looks like. And I'm going to do a demo as well. So this is just a quick overview. So first, you'll see, it's asking you where the tree is, because again, a tree in DC is going to have different benefits than a tree in Cleveland. And then it's going to ask you to input a little bit of information about the tree. So this DBH, what species it is, and a little bit about its condition. And finally, you get your output. So you do have the link for the app here, but again, we're going to ask you to refrain from trying to, follow along on your computer, and just follow along with the demo just to prevent, overwhelming our servers. We're really happy that you're all enthusiastic, but I just want you to, get a feel so that you have, you can confidently go and do a MyTree analysis. So. Give me a second. Okay, so this is what the MyTree landing page looks like, and you'll go ahead and just click Get Started, which will then take you to this page where it asks you, where is your tree? So you can either search for a tree if you know the address of a tree that you're interested in, or you can use this GPS marker to find the address of where you are. So say you're doing the trees in your backyard and you're working at home, you just go ahead and click here and it will locate you on the map. And this is in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I live. And so I just searched for the address, and you'll see it shows me an aerial imagery of that location. So this is a leaf off time. So, but I know that tree is there, so I'm going ahead and placing it there. Next, it's going to ask you a little bit of information about the tree. So I know that this is the Chinese elm, but if you didn't, you just had a general leaf shape, you could click one of those. And I had already typed it in, but I can go ahead and switch to the common name and start typing it. And it's right here. And so Chinese elm is actually known as lacebark elm too. So that's why common names can get a little bit tricky. But if you switch over to the scientific name, you can also just search, if I could spell. Okay. All right. And that'll pop up there. And it actually so it'll show up there. And then the next tab, it will ask you a little bit about the general condition. So again, this is a simplified measurements, but you can get a little bit of guidance about, what to look for, what to call a fair versus a poor tree. And this is in relation to the leaf area index, which drive a lot of the benefits of the tree. So this is just for telling MyTree to kind of scale down the leaf area, which will have some other effects on those benefits. And then you input the trunk size. So that's at the DBH. And again, this can be in diameter or circumference. And next, it's going to ask you, just to back up a second. So this is in inches, but I will point out that under the project options, you can also change this to metric if you're outside of the United States. And you can also actually change the currency. So obviously this tree is here in the United States, but if you were in Uganda, you can go ahead and change that, and it'll convert it to shillings, I think it is. So to note for our international users. Okay, so back to the input, it'll ask you about the sun exposure. So this tree, I happen to know that for now, at least it's in full sunshine and until the building next door gets built. So I just click that. And then the next one, it's going to ask you if it's within 60 feet of a building. So this is optional, but this measurement is related to whether you are interested in energy effects potentially of the tree for cooling and heating. So if it's not within 60 feet, it actually won't have any measurable effects on the energy usage of the building. But if it's within, you can go ahead and click yes, and it'll ask you a little bit of information about the building, as well as the direction of the building from the tree. So that is when MyTree assumes you're standing at the tree and you look around, identify the building, and you get that compass direction. But this is something you can also skip if you don't have it, or there's no buildings nearby. So after I filled all that in, I can go ahead and click add more trees or get results. And it'll take you to this page, which shows the benefits, and that includes both. So it'll give you first a summary, a little bit about the tree, so the species, where it is, and it will give you the annual benefits for this tree, for the cumulative effects of the cumulative totals of these values, but it'll also break it down for you. Kind of like, it looks like a nutrition label. So it'll tell you, instead of how much sugar, something has, it'll tell you how much carbon dioxide the trees are taking up. So it'll break those down both in the monetary value as well as the total value. And you can see this for the annual year or for projected over 20 years. And we also provide the equivalents. So these are kind of, other ways of communicating these values, which can be really useful if, say, you're talking, presenting this information to like a younger, students, or just, these are also really great kind of like factoids that you can include in a presentation or, some communication, like a social media post or something like that. But yeah, so those are the main results. And I'll note that in MyTree, you can't save your project like you can with other tools. So once you click away from this and, the next day, there's a good chance it'll be gone, right? So the way to save these results are either by copying the URL here, and you can put that in a spreadsheet or in your email, or you can email it to yourself, or you can actually use this save as image function that's pretty new, that will create basically a screenshot of these benefits here and just download it straight to your computer. So, and some people even just, they'll just write these down on a spreadsheet or something like that. But because of that, we don't recommend this tool for when you have a lot of trees. So maybe up to, 20 trees or something like that. If you're doing a project, you can do it. You can get those. But if you're looking to do this with many more trees than that, we have other tools that would be more suitable. So I think those are the basics of MyTree. So as you can see, it's pretty, you can try this later and see. It'll take you 5 minutes max to pull together something like this. And I'm going to click back to my presentation now. And so I'll just highlight, this is an example I did of that Chinese elm that was in downtown Knoxville, and they were actually thinking of removing it to install this art sculpture, but they decided not to because people were like, why can't we have art and trees? So I just ran this tree through MyTree, and you can actually see it there in the background, that tree. And I don't know if my clicker's showing, but anyways, but yeah, so this is what my output looks like for that Chinese elm. And so in terms of the outputs, as you'll see, they're, using even just the image alone can be really useful, or on this presentation or something like that. But what a lot of people do is actually take it to the field and do these tree tags. So they'll, jot down that information from MyTree and use these tags that get placed on trees around the community. So we actually offer some of these templates on the website, on this web page here, if you wanted to make your own. And I also wanted to highlight this big project that took the idea of a tree tag across the continent of Europe. And they actually, an organization in the Netherlands put together this campaign with 12 other organizations. And they made all these tree tags and went out and put them all on the same day. So together they got over 700 trees tagged in their communities. And since they had this whole social media campaign, they, they got a lot of pictures of people across all these different countries in Europe. You can follow that URL there to see the extent of their project, but just a really cool outreach project using the benefit that you can get out of MyTree to have both in-person community engagement, but also have they got a good amount of public media coverage and in their respective news sites and things like that. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously a bigger effort, but just to show how much you can do with such a simple tool, easy to use tool like MyTree. So yeah, so with that, I'll hand it over so we can start learning about design.
Hey, Anna, thank you. That was awesome. And yeah, a nice quick selection of some of the things that you can do with those results. We had some people chime in that they were psyched about those tree tags. And while I'm setting up a couple of things, I also just, I'm keeping an eye on the chat window. I got to tell you guys, one of my favorite things just happened, and that's somebody spoke about the project they're doing locally where they are, and another person chimed in and said, tell me more. How did you do that? I want to do that. And those are the kinds of conversations that we, really appreciate. We love to see those kinds of connections. It's not something we necessarily say at the outset every time, but we absolutely look at this as a great opportunity for everybody on this call. We know there's a lot of people here, but if it's somebody you recognize or somebody says something interesting, yes, please feel free to use this as a networking opportunity. Okay, so with that, I want to do a couple of quick things for the duration of this presentation. I'm going to turn off my camera just to give us every opportunity to go ahead and see this live presentation on iTree Design. So again, sticking with simple, iTree Design falls into that category. It's actually, I skipped ahead, sorry. But yes, another tool for estimating tree benefits of individual trees or multiple trees at what we call the parcel level, right? So the property level. Design actually works with a Google Map interface. So it's going to allow you to, again, locate the area that you're interested in and take a look at how a variety of your tree species, how your tree size, and site selection even can affect how, the ecosystem benefits that you're seeing in return. And iTree Design brings this concept of tree benefits, like I said, to that backyard scale, right? Not only are you going ahead and introducing a map, but it makes it personal. It makes it immediately recognizable if it's your house, your client's house, your neighbor's house, or a part of your community that people recognize. So this can be really helpful for encouraging communities to talk about how to make investments in trees. Design can also be used to simulate tree planting scenarios. If you're trying to help someone realize that as a tree matures, it will start to provide greater benefits over time. So, right, that idea of keeping trees healthy and managing them as such to increase those benefits. So it can be, again, an effective strategy if you're trying to help folks advocate for planting projects, or if you're looking at, helping decision makers think about actual proper or preferred tree selections, proper planning techniques that you might consider, site placement. All of those things can sort of be visualized in design. And again, acknowledging that this is what we get from trees. And if you're in a position where you're trying to make the case for management and caring for those trees, this can be one of the places to do that, one of the tools that can help you do it. Again, considerations can sometimes be that, with design, you can't import your own inventory. Like MyTree, this is going to ask you to input the information for for your particular trees, and that will take, that requires some time on the user end. It's also not a tool that's going to itemize certain pollution quantities. It's just going to value those as a whole. But outside of that, design can be a really compelling tool to look at, especially, like I said, with that up close and personal kind of perspective, depending on where you are. Design is what we refer to as one of our legacy tools, and it has what we lovingly call seniority among the online tools. This, lends itself a little bit to some of the things we've been talking about today in terms of bringing some patience, but recognizing that it's trying to access quite a bit of data depending on how much information you're entering. Do remember, and there'll be more information about this, as the year progresses, but design is slated to get a substantial facelift in 2025. So stay tuned. And in its current version, that means it can feel a little bit slower than some less data intensive websites. But for example, I processed about 20 trees with 5 buildings this morning. Took about 90 seconds, which is pretty awesome, but it can feel a lot longer when you're sitting at your monitor, right? But design is a tool that can really help you start to create new value ideas around trees. It's a way that you can highlight gems in your area. You can model out crown growth, and then you can assess the benefits as they are currently, and you'll be able to see how they'll perform over time. And again, just a reminder that design is a tool that will give you a savable project if that's something that you are interested in, either because you want to share it or you might want to look at some things differently or add some things and, moving forward. It also spits out what I consider one of iTree's better looking reports, just in terms of some of the charts and the graphs that it provides. We'll take a look at these when we open up the tool. But again, these are, things that you can share. You can, print a report or save it as a PDF, again, for any time that you're trying to help other decision makers or, other people with a vested interest, depending on what the goals of your project are, to see the benefits of the trees that you're talking about or that you're interested in. So what I want to do next is go ahead and take us into the iTree design tool. And just for starters, I will, well, I guess if people can't see that I've switched to an open browser, give me a shout out. Otherwise, I think we're okay. Sort of as a, all of our tools are, developed and considered for a variety of browsers, and all of the main ones. So that means Chrome, that means Firefox, that does mean Edge, and it also includes Safari. But, like I've been mentioning, design in and of itself is one of our senior tools. You can do things like, use this pretty readily on your laptop. If you're trying to use it on a tablet or another mobile device, test it out first, just to make sure that it's behaving as expected. So I want to go ahead and start with design. You'll see some information about how to load a previous project. If you remember, I said that this is a tool that will let you save your work. And you can also, under the menu, find a variety of different help options. And that's where you'll find like resources for methodology. But let's start with an address. Instead of bringing you to the map first, it sort of wants you to say, are you at your desk or are you out in the field? And in this case, I'm at my desk, and let's go to New Orleans today, just because we can. So I'm going to give this a pretty basic address that's going to take me to, I did this earlier today, so Google is recalling it, take me to basically where I want to go. And a lot of times, if you don't know the zip code offhand, for example, let's see what that looks like. It's going to give you the standard map interface option that says, based on what you've given us, this is the address we found. And a lot of times, yes, it's just that if it's missing that zip code, that's okay. So that's going to pop us over to this main page, which is going to do a couple of different things for us. And primarily with design, what you're going to do is identify whether or not you want to see energy benefits. And what I mean by that is that we're looking at the 4 core ecosystem services. We're looking at uh, carbon and carbon sequestration. We're also looking at air pollution removal. We're looking at stormwater mitigation. And in addition, design can tell you a little bit about energy savings. That has to do with whether or not your trees are near buildings, right? So the first thing it's going to ask you to do, even before you start drawing trees, is to consider whether or not you want to see those. You can skip that part. But in this instance, what we'll go ahead is put at least one of these buildings in our design project. So I do want to calculate these impacts today. And to draw a structure, we're going to use this little polygon tool, and anytime you hover over one of these icons up here, it'll let you know what they're for. Even this spider web, we'll get to that one in a little bit. But if I want to draw the outline of a structure, I can keep this as simple or as detailed as I'd like. Again, I'm placing points around the corners that I can see. Looks like we have a porch front over here that I'll go ahead and include. This is sort of our way of identifying, the parameters that a building takes up. It's not going to be able to tell you, we're not saving information about how many stories or how tall this particular building is. But let's go ahead and decide that this was a house built between 1950 and 1980. It's entirely possible in this area of New Orleans that it was built before that. But one of the reasons it's asking you to choose between those breakdowns of time, when was it built? It's trying to assess very generally what the situation is for heating and cooling in that house. It can generally be assumed that if you have a structure built before the 1950s, they probably don't have air conditioning. Can be, maybe they've been modified after the fact, but again, these are sort of general rules. It also lends itself to understanding that after 1980, a lot of the methods for heating and cooling any given property were they're probably a little bit more efficient than they were for, the 30 to 40 years prior to that. So that's the reasoning behind making these distinctions.
Hey, Krista, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we had a couple people ask if you could just zoom in a little bit. I don't know if that up in your address bar there, if you can just make
Let's
design
see
a
if
little
we
bit
can.
bigger.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's see if, okay.
Looks good. Thank you.
Hopefully that helps. Awesome. All right. And while I'm here, I've drawn this structure, and I'm not going to draw any other structures at this time, but I'll take this opportunity to go ahead and mention some of the other features on this map. It is trying to do a lot of things in a constricted space, so you can pop out these navigation tools in a variety of ways. And again, this can be for the zoom in and the zoom out and the navigate around. You can also use your scroll bar and your keyboard if that's a process that's easier for you or more familiar. And you can also access some of these features of Google Maps that lets you do a little bit of a tilt. We'll talk, as we go about how some of those features can be advantageous. A lot of times that has to do with just trying to see what is where, since that overhead perspective can leave some questions on occasion. It's also something, design is a tool that if you want will access the street view for you. So we can come down here and take a closer look at this house that we're looking at. And we're gonna basically put down a couple of these beautiful live oak trees that we can see here on this corner and take a look at those benefits. But it's just showing off some of the other things you can see on your map. In order to orient yourself and get a better sense of what it is, the information you're trying to get that's on the ground from what you can see in the aerial image. So when we go to place trees, we're going to, as we did in MyTree, we're going to talk about, we're going to describe this tree. So I know I have these live oak trees. I could just enter oak at this point, and I would have seen that selection of suggestions. I'm going to say that we'll do this first one on the corner. That one looked pretty decent. I'm going to give that one a diameter of 15 inches. Looks like it's in decent shape. That one pretty much has full sun, but again, you can account for locations that see more shade. Ooh, what just happened? One of the things that starts to happen as you are describing your tree, and this has to do with species selection most of the time, but it's going to pull up a diagram around your structure to identify where you would likely see, it's not necessarily a guarantee, but where you would most likely see the greatest amount of those energy savings. And that has to do with the placement of the tree alongside the structure and whether or not you're seeing shading impacts in the summer or impacts from usually wind in the winter, or there are also instances where an abundance of shade in the winter is also going to carve away some of the heating that you would be getting from the sun. So all of those things are factored into these considerations. And this is just saying that where it's greener, that might be if you were looking to plant a tree. Obviously, we're going to identify, I'm identifying trees that already exist. But if you were trying to look out for, and I think about a planting project, this could help you make those kinds of decisions. But I told you I would tell you what this little spider web is for, and that's to turn that off. So quickly, what I want to do is go ahead and place this tree. So I'm going to grab the tree tool. I'm going to put that right here. It's going to confirm this information for me. I'm going to put OK. And actually, I'm going to, these are other live oaks. I know that the one down the street from this, a little bit smaller. So I'm going to put that one a little bit smaller. We'll place that over here. And then the one on the other corner is actually a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and place that tree over here. Okay. So I wanted to give you an example of the ways that you can look at the crown. You can model the crown growth on these trees over time. And that might be something that takes us a minute to load here. So I'm going to go ahead and cheat because I've already done this project. I just opened a different browser so that we could see more readily. Again, that crown growth modeler probably took about 2 minutes to load, but seriously, in the interest of time for this demonstration, we just want to make sure that you know it's there and what it can show you in terms of how you can expect to see that growth over time. One of the other things then that you would do is once you've placed as many structures and trees as you want to see, you're going to estimate those benefits. And once again, I've already loaded this so that we don't have to wait on those processing times. But in order to estimate those benefits, what you're going to do is identify between 2 and basically 100. How many years out do you want to see these benefits alongside the benefits that you'll see it currently has? So one more time, I'm going to go ahead and move to a browser where I have already put these trees. It's looking at our live oaks. I added one other southern magnolia that I saw that tree had tucked along its side. And these are the results that you'll be able to see and click through the tabs to get, like Anna was describing, in the same way that we can see some of the examples of ways that your benefits, real talk, right? How do you translate these benefits for other people? So these can, definitely be really useful in terms of the ways you're trying to enhance the conversation about the benefits you can see. So we see that for the current year. We see that in terms of benefits that we can see over time and then looking out into the future. And as I mentioned, you can always go ahead and take this project, either print that report or view it as a PDF. And the reason that can be nice is 2 things. You get these the information about your benefits and those cool graphs are presented in this report. But like I mentioned at the very beginning, you can't export the information you have out of design, but you will get tabulated information about the trees that you entered and a little bit of an itemization there about the benefits that it shows. So with that, I know that, you know, this is sort of like lightning round in terms of looking at these tools. Jason's going to show us how to kick this up a notch and do things on a little bit of a larger scale with iTree planting. Take it away, Jason.
All right, thanks, Krista. Yeah, we're going through these really fast. And I think part of it is to kind of give you a flavor of the online tools we have, and hopefully you can circle back to some of these, maybe if you give the homework a try after the session. So iTree planting, you'll see a lot of parallels to the other online tools, MyTree and Design here. Again, they're all built on that engine, so they're all going to provide us with the same sort of inputs and results, just in different packages. So in this one, the example that I want to walk through real quick is the building my office is in is the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society building. And they do a lot of tree planting in and around the city of Philadelphia. And they get a lot of funding for that planting from our local power company, which is PECO. And this is their planting list over here. I just have a spreadsheet, the name of the species here, and how many were planted. This is their planting list from 2021. So they wanted to go ahead and get ecosystem service estimates for each of the trees they planted so that they could report it out to their funder. So iTree planting is the perfect tool for this. It has planting in the name, so that kind of gives it away. Anytime you're doing a planting project where you're planting something like a bunch of each species, iTree planting is the tool you're going to want to use. So I'll click Get Started here. Just like all the other tools, we need to put in our location. So it's going to give us those localized results. So I'm going to scroll down here to Pennsylvania. We do have US national averages here. So in some cases we have folks who are working all across the country. So you may want to use US national averages rather than a specific place. But I'll go ahead and zoom into Philadelphia, which is in Philadelphia County. And it is the only city there. And so now we're just going to move through these tabs from our location, parameters, trees, and finally get to our report. So parameters here, we have different electricity emissions factors. We will provide default ones that are local to your location, so you don't really need to worry about those at this point. But the cool thing with iTree planting is that we can project how far into the future we want to grow these trees. These are mostly street trees, so we were comfortable going out about 20 years with our projection. And the one thing that you can do in planting that you can't do in other tools is you can actually put in mortality numbers. So if you want to say that we know we're going to lose 3% of our trees per year, and this is our default value, we can go ahead and enter that here. And you can actually switch back and forth between an annual rate and a project lifetime. And you'll see if we stick with 3% over 20 years, that actually means we're going to lose about 46% of our trees. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And it's an important thing to capture in our modeling. In my case here, Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, they have a lot of infrastructure around keeping those trees alive, so they can get their mortality rate down a little bit lower. So this is actually a annual rate of 1.5% a year. We can see project lifetime, that's going to be about 26% of our trees lost over those 20 years. If you're ever looking for a reference for how to come up with a mortality number and you want to be more specific than this paper by Deb Hilbert, this research paper on urban tree mortality, is a really nice one. I'll drop the link to this in the chat if someone else doesn't do it first, but it has a table in there of different mortality rates based on different types of projects, whether you're street trees or yard trees. It has kind of a high, medium, and low mortality categories. So it's a nice place to start if you need those numbers. So that's all our parameters there. I'll go ahead and hit next. And now we're just taking our species list that we have in our spreadsheet and we're entering it into iTree planting. So I'm just going to go through one species here. We'll start with this first one. This is a Sargent cherry. Up top here, you can see we can toggle between English and metric units. Just like in the other tools, we can switch between common name and scientific name. All of these use the same species list, so you'll see the same species throughout. So I'll start typing in this Sargent cherry down here. And then you got to put in your tree sizes. Our minimum size here is 1 inch. That's just what our science says, where our models come from are limited to trees that are 1 inch in DBH and bigger. PHS uses trees that are slightly larger, so they wanted me to put in 1.5-inch trees. And then we've got a little bit of a challenging piece here because they don't know exactly where each one of these trees is relative to a building. But Pico, they're an energy company, so they want those energy related benefits. So we decided to just be sort of conservative. We put the trees out in this 40 to 59 range away from the building. If we leave this at north, that's kind of a conservative range where the trees are going to provide some energy benefits, but not as much as if we plant them on the west side. If you remember that web that Krista popped up in iTree Design a second ago, that west side really provides the most benefits. North and south, you're going to get kind of middling benefits, so we'll stick with that. And the median age of a home in Philadelphia is about 1980, so we'll leave that. And we do have heating and cooling. Condition, this is a street tree. It might be excellent when we plant it, but it's not going to stay that way, so we'll change that to good. Our sun exposure, again, it's next to, probably since it is a street tree, often it's going to be next to buildings, so we'll leave that at partial sun. And then the big one here, instead of typing in each tree individually, we know we've got 73 of these trees we planted in 2021. So we can type in 73 of those trees. And then we can go ahead and we can hit the plus button here, and we would add our next species. And we can keep going down through our planting list. You can enter in as many different of these species groups as you want. You can be as specific or as general as you want as you go through that. You can save in iTree planting. So like iTree Design, if we go to our project dropdown, we can save this and then we can load it later. So typically what I do, if I type in like 25 or so species, I'll save it because I'm worried I might lose those if, I have a browser crash or my computer turns off. It's just saved in the browser. So you do want to save it to your own computer so that you can then load it again later if anything happens. So from there, I could either click on this report tab or click next. I'm not going to do that right now because it takes a second to load, but I did do this before. I went through this whole species list for PHS. And this is what we get. This is what our report looks like. You can see again, we can switch between English and metric units. It's only going to show my first 10 entries here. If I scroll down, I'm going to leave it as that, but you can see we have totals down the bottom. We can move along to our next page. And then there's a bunch of different outputs here in these tabs that we can move across. So tree growth. So this is actually going to estimate how much it thinks that 1.5 inch DBH tree is going to grow over the next 20 years. And we're up at 7.5 inches, and it's going to estimate a height. It's going to estimate how many of those trees survive. So you get to a lot of sort of granular detail just about the structure of the trees you put in. And then we can look at our ecosystem services, same ones we have in the other tools, CO2, energy benefits. So we can see of those 73 Sargent cherries, we think we're going to average about $4,700 in benefits over the next 20 years. And we can break that out. That's electricity. And then we have heating fuel saved as well. And again, all these are summed up across all our trees at the bottom here. And we actually have a really nice graph at the bottom here. So you can export this graph. You can download it as a picture, so you can paste it directly into other materials. And this graph is a little bit dynamic. You can kind of turn things on and off. So if you didn't want the combined one here, you can click on combined and it'll remove that. So you can just see each one of the benefits individually and how they change over time. So I really like iTree planting. The interface is super simple, but you can get to some powerful results for a whole bunch of trees, hundreds or thousands of trees really quickly, especially compared to some of our other individual tree tools. You can copy this data, so it'll just copy this table and you can paste it somewhere else. I like to export it. It'll export it to a spreadsheet. It'll be this exact table as well as all the information to make this graph. So if you wanted each year's data that's used to make this graph, if you hit that export, you'll get each one of those out and you can make your own graph. You can adjust those numbers. You can look at, instead of cumulative, you could calculate out how much you're going to get each year. So it's a really nice tool. It has some summary information up here. It even tells you down the bottom here what version of that iTree engine you're using. So if you change the version, if we update the version in the future, you'll know that maybe these benefits have changed a little bit from what you did in the past. So that's iTree planting really as fast as I can go through it, but I think it is a really nice tool to sort of simply get to planting benefits really quick. So before we run out of time here, I just kind of want to wrap things up talking about how you decide between these tools and just what the different tools are really used for. So MyTree, which Anna went through, that's really useful. We see a lot in education, using it in schools, using it with students. It's really nice for engagement of the public. You can put together these tree tags. And I know someone asked in the chat if we had any examples of tree tags. We actually have Both of these tree tags here linked on our webpage, and I think Anna or Jay dropped that in the chat a little bit ago. This one on the top was actually put together by Kristen Thomas. She hired a graphic designer. She attended our iTree Academy last year. She hired someone to put this together, and then she made the template available for us. So you can download this exact thing, fill it out with your tree benefits from MyTree. But it's really nice. You can stand under a tree with your phone with folks, and you can show them the benefits of those trees. Some of the strengths, it's super simple to use. It's meant to be used on a mobile device, so it's designed for that. Really quick, and it does that 20-year projection. You don't need to really think about projecting out over time, but it does give you those bigger benefits. Limitations, you can't save projects. If you start to do more than 10 trees, it just gets a little tedious on your phone, and you need to have an internet connection. We might have some new features coming up with MyTree. Some things that we're looking into is perhaps mapping those collected trees from everybody and supporting group projects so different people can measure trees, contribute to the same results. iTree design, our most common uses are connecting with property owners. It really has some nice visuals, and Krista showed a bunch of those, and you can copy each one of those. If you just right click on them, you can copy them out of the results page and paste them anywhere you want if you're making your own documents to convey, or you're making your own presentations. It's nice for landscape planners if they want to start to think about where to put trees around buildings to provide the most benefits. It's got that benefits web that's really nice for that. And you can evaluate different scenarios. So if I put a tree here or a different species here, or I have different health of that tree, how's it going to change over time? So just one of those examples we have. This is a street in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is Anchester Drive. Up and down both sides of this street, they have ash trees. The city was coming through and preemptively taking out the ash trees ahead of the emerald ash borer, killing them all. But the folks on Anchester Drive put all those trees, so I think there's over 40 trees here and 20 houses, into iTree Design. They ran the project. They found that over the next 20 years or so, they're going to get over $80,000 worth of benefits from these trees. So they decided to go ahead and pay to have those trees treated, to keep them up, protect them from emerald ash borer. And the city said, hey, those numbers look good to us, and that's okay, so go ahead with your plan. So iTree Design was really useful in helping them make the case for keeping those trees up. Strengths of iTree Design, again, those great visuals. You can share that report, that PDF report that Krista pulled up. It's nice and interactive, so if you're working with students or someone who's a little more advanced, they can click around on that web. And some limitations. It's limited to a handful of buildings and a few dozen trees. If you go past that, it's really going to bog down or may not process at all. And it can be helpful to be working on an actual computer rather than on a tablet, because you can have your mouse to click around. We are going to modernize this, so hopefully it will get quicker and expand some of that capacity so you can do more trees and do things quicker in iTree Design. And lastly, iTree Planting. Just like it says in the name, it's perfect for tracking planting projects. It's already accepted for things like LEED certification of landscapes and carbon accounting. If you work in the state of California, if you get a grant to plant trees from the state of California, you have to provide an iTree planting project to report the results of that planting so that they can use it in their statewide carbon accounting. So it's already used in those things. It's great for funding requests because you can project out the benefits of the trees you're going to plant and what that's going to do over time. And it's also nice for reporting. If you have a real mortality rate, you can report out how successful you were. So it's really nice for all of those things. This is an example from the Baltimore Tree Trust. Marcus Tua provided us with this example, and you can get to the actual story map down here, which is really cool. But they planted a whole bunch of trees. They did a bunch of different projects throughout the city, and they projected those benefits in iTree Planting. They actually measured the mortality of their trees. So they used realistic mortality rates in iTree Planting. I think they were pretty high, 7% or so. And then they could also make the case, if we had lower mortality, how do we get higher benefits, to make the case for continued funding for these projects in the future. And just to sort of wrap up that planting from the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society project I was doing, this is the infographic they put together from that exact iTree planting project that I was sharing there. So I provided them with the numbers. And what they found is that PICO provides them with about $300,000 worth of trees to do this planting. And this is from 2019 to 2021. And they get over close to $1 million worth of ecosystem services estimated by iTree out at the end. So this was really powerful for them. It was really powerful for Pico. They could put these numbers together, and ultimately Pico then upped their funding from 100,000 a year starting in 2019 to doing 200,000 a year going forward. So it's really a nice way to report out on all that information. And just one last thing I want to show here is just kind of last summary of how you might decide between these tools. MyTree, it's great when you have groups of folks out in the field with their phones. It's the quickest and easiest, super simple to use on a mobile device, really nice in education settings, and good for kind of those limited sets of trees. iTree Design, it's got those really nice visuals. It's really nice to connect people to their own trees so you can show them their property and their trees or trees they may want to plant. And it's nice for multiple buildings and maybe a few dozen trees. And finally, that iTree planting, it's really designed with planting projects in mind, can easily handle hundreds or thousands of trees. Nice for accounting and accountability and sustainability type reporting. So it's really nice to sort of compare all of these three right off the top. And if you do this, go through the homework, give this a try, and hopefully this will help inform which tool you may want to use for your own iTree projects going forward. And with that,